The neon bar sign flickered weakly against the midnight sky. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of whiskey and cigar smoke. A few old cowboys nursed their drinks, muttering stories of long-forgotten rodeos. The door creaked open, and the room fell into an eerie silence. Clint Eastwood stepped inside. The bartender raised an eyebrow. "Never thought I'd see you in a place like this." Clint, dressed in a simple leather jacket and jeans, nodded. "Just looking for a quiet drink." But quiet wasn't on the menu that night. At the far end of the bar, a man sat slumped over, swirling the last of his bourbon. His clothes were tattered, his knuckles bruised. A once tough fighter now drowning in regret. "Hey?" the man slurred, looking up, his bloodshot eyes locked onto Clint. "You think you're some kind of tough guy, don't you?" The entire bar tensed. A few men shifted in their seats, ready to bolt if things got ugly. Clint didn't react. He simply took a seat at the bar, signaling for a drink. But the man wasn't finished. He slammed his glass down and staggered to his feet. "You think you know what pain is? You don't know a damn thing about losing everything." Clint finally turned to face him. His gaze was calm, unreadable. "Maybe not," he said, "but you sure do." The words hit the man harder than any punch ever had. For the first time that night, he didn't have a comeback. The bartender sighed. "He's been like this for weeks, lost everything in one bad decision." The man let out a bitter laugh. "One decision?" He grabbed his drink and sat down beside Clint. Try a lifetime of them. His name was Jake. Once, he had everything, a family, a good job, even dreams of being something greater. But life had a way of beating the fight out of a man. One wrong choice led to another, and before he knew it, he was just another ghost in a bar, talking to shadows of what could have been. Clint listened. He never interrupted, never judged, just listened. And that, more than anything, made Jake talk. "My wife begged me to quit drinking. Said she still saw something in me," Jake muttered. "I told her she was wrong." He exhaled, rubbing his face. "Turns out, she was right." A heavy silence filled the room. Then Clint did something unexpected. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an old, crumpled piece of paper. He slid it across the bar toward Jake. Jake hesitated, then unfolded it. It was a telegram. The paper was yellowed, the ink fading. But the words were clear. "You'll never make it in Hollywood. Give up before you embarrass yourself." Jake's breath hitched. "Who sent you this?" Clint leaned back. "A producer, back when I was a nobody." Jake looked from the paper to Clint, his voice barely a whisper. "And you didn't listen?" Clint shook his head. "No?" "Why?" Clint took a slow sip of his drink, then met Jake's eyes. "Because I still saw something in myself." Jake's hands trembled as he folded the paper. Jake let out a shaky breath. For the first time in years, he saw himself not as a lost cause, but as a man who still had a choice. He turned to Clint. "You really think people like me can change?" Clint studied him for a long moment. Then, without a word, he reached into his pocket again, this time pulling out a single coin. He placed it on the bar. Heads up, Jake frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Clint simply flipped the coin over. Tails. Then, without another word, he stood up, finished his drink, and walked toward the door. Jake stared at the coin for a long moment before realization hit him like a thunderbolt. Life could change in a single flip. One decision, one choice, and it was still in his hands. That night, Jake didn't order another drink. He just sat there, staring at the coin, thinking about the moment Clint Eastwood had just given him. Weeks later, the bartender saw Jake again. He was clean-shaven, sober, standing a little taller. "You look different," the bartender said. Jake smiled, slipping something onto the bar. It was the same coin. "Heads," Jake said. I make it. Tails. I still make it. And then, without another word, he walked out. The bartender chuckled, shaking his head. Damn cowboy worked his magic again. And somewhere, out on a distant road, Clint Eastwood was already on to the next town, never knowing the life he had just saved. Years later, Jake became a mentor to struggling young men who had lost their way. He never told them about that night with Clint, but whenever one of them said they didn't believe in second chances, he'd smile, flip a coin, and say, "Neither did I, until someone showed me otherwise." And just like that, Clint Eastwood's silent lesson lived on.